What's up, everyone? Well, we're back for round 4 on our transforming a mass market ficus into a masterpiece. All right, well, if you haven't seen the first 3 parts of this series, you can jump back through our back catalog and take a look. Where we left this last was that I had cleaned up this wound and resealed it, and then just sort of left everything else to grow. So the wound has really started to heal over nicely here, and I don't want these branches to get too big compared to the trunk. I'm going to go ahead and try to get a rough measurement of this so that as I continue working with it, that we get an idea of how much bigger the trunk has gotten. Now, because I've left all of these large, long branches to run, obviously the trunk has gotten bigger, the branches have gotten bigger, and we've seen some significant progress. But the goal here really isn't to have a much bigger trunk. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to change the sort of scale of the tree and the style of the tree from what we started with to something that I would be happy with exhibiting in a show. As I'm filming this, it is early September, and that means that we're nearing the autumnal equinox, and that's the point at which I would expect that this guy is going to largely stop growing. It might continue growing a little bit, but I'm not expecting a lot of growth. So I'm not going to do any root work right now. I'll save that until late spring when the tree has started actively growing again. But what I am going to do is go ahead and cut back all of these branches that are starting to get kind of large. Now, I'm not concerned about branches being overly large. That's not a problem that I'm trying to solve here, but what I am trying to do is create more character in the branches. So I wired the first few inches of these, and so I'm going to cut back into those wired sections. Just in case you think I'm off in left field here, just making all of this up, I want to interject that one of the best bonsai books that I've ever read is this SiDao book by Cheng. It's a self-published book. If you're looking for inspiration in terms of how to treat ficus bonsai, this book is just about as good as you're going to get. So he starts by including photos of naturally growing ficus and then moves on to a field-grown or large trunk to start with. And he goes all the way from here with sort of stubs and wounds and that sort of thing, all the way through a progression of probably 20 plus years to this finished tree. All right, so back to our victim here. I'm going to go ahead and cut off all these branches. Now, this is going to be like kind of like part 1 again, in the sense that all I'm effectively doing is cutting back things to a very tight, minimal kind of, I don't even know how to say it. I'll just go ahead and do it. All right, so there we have it. I have once again gone and cut off almost all of the branching on the tree. Now, we're probably going to go through this same process a couple more times as we continue building the branch taper and the interior structure of this plant. So you might be asking yourself, like, well, why not just use more of those branches? And the answer is that I want a lot of movement in the branching, but I also want a lot of taper. So as a ficus, I think that the examples that I saw in the Cheng book that I showed you guys are really top notch, and these Taiwanese guys are really doing really great bonsai work, whether it's a ficus or another species, but I find it really inspirational. And so I'm using that as the model for moving forward with this tree. Obviously now I have a lot of potential cutting stock here, so I am going to go ahead and root a bunch of these shoots and start propagating this species because I find it kind of fun to work with. In terms of the decision making about where I cut the tree, I cut this shoot off, which I at one point was thinking was going to be the top, But I'm not so sure now. I like the idea of the tree not just being completely upright, and since this is already bigger, I'm thinking that maybe the trunk will continue off this direction and then come back over here. This looks like I'm already up to about 5 inches here with my structure. That wouldn't leave me very much space in order to actually create a shohin, so that might mean that this ends up being a little bit bigger tree. But I can also come back and cut off this large section that I'm thinking of as the trunk right now to bring it down a couple of inches, or I could just cut these stubs shorter to reduce the height. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now because I like that idea better. Now, in the case of these branches, I am not really planning on keeping them even this long, but what I've done is I've left essentially a couple of nodes, a couple of leaves that are still here in place to give myself pretty much a guarantee of where I'm going to get buds. I might then come back and remove the outer portions of this once I establish the next set of smaller branches, and that will essentially end up being the same type of operation that I did here on this large wound. So above the nebari, this is just about exactly 2 inches side to side that direction, and about 1 3/4 in the opposite. I'm not going to repot this right now. I'm not going to repot it through the winter. I will put this in the greenhouse and let it just sort of run, and I would expect that I won't follow up on this tree, it being September right now, probably until at least March or April. That wraps up this video, part 4 of transforming our mass market ficus. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.